Okay, now we're ready to pick back up where we left off. So in this video, we're going to go into adding those subassemblies, but doing it the way that we need to using the foundation library. A little bit different than the older libraries that we had. So follow along and I'll show you the steps on how you can add some new subassemblies to your product. All right, now it's time to add those doors and drawers to this product. So I may have mentioned earlier about how adding subassemblies in the foundation library is different than the component library. It's not that it's any different, it's just that there's a lot more subassemblies and we need to add them to our products in a way that we might not be used to if we're coming from the component library. Now, if that didn't make sense, don't worry about it. Let's just get into this next exercise and add some doors and drawers to this cabinet. So we're going to start off by getting into our prompts page, clicking on that, right-clicking, and showing subassemblies. We just cancel this. You can get there the same way by going into the menu and getting to subassemblies that way. We're going to work our way up from the bottom to the top. So let's start off with those doors that we need, selecting from our subassembly library in the universal category, and then to component inserts. Here we have our component doors. Now you can right-click on that and add, or you can just double-click and add it to your product. So now we have our component doors, and let's just do that one more time since we're going to need 2 of these subassemblies. Now the next step is going to be telling Toolbox where it needs to be on this product. So right-click and pick corners. It's also nice picking corners when you're in this conceptual view. It makes it easier to zoom right into that corner that you need. And remember, with picking corners, we're always working on the front of our cabinet. So the lower left-hand corner in the front of our cabinet to the upper right-hand corner. And when you're working with the component doors, it knows about the overlay that it's needed for the sides, the top and the bottom. So that's why we're just picking that interior opening. Do the same thing for the one below. And now we have our base point in X, base point in Y, and in Z. You'll also notice that these values are hard-coded, not formula-driven. So unfortunately, this won't be a parametric product unless we went in here and started adding some formulas. Now that we have those component doors added, we can right-click and also get into the subassembly prompts. We're going to need 2 doors on this. And we're also going to need to change the right reveal overhang. So currently, it's a full overlay on the right-hand side, but because we have that division in there, we're going to right-click, show formula, and I'm just going to take off 3/8 of an inch, just half of the thickness of your division. The top reveal is coming in from a global variable, and we're just going to take off another 1/4 of an inch, minus 0.25. That'll leave us a little bit of that fixed shelf showing for our drawer fronts to land on. Bottom reveal overhang, we'll leave that alone and hit OK. And let's get into the next one. Do the same thing, change it to 2 doors. But this one, we're going to have our left reveal overhang minus 3/8 of an inch, or half the thickness of that division part. I'm just going to hit OK so we can see what we got going on so far. All right, so I forgot to make the change on the top doors, but that's no problem. We got to go back into those prompts anyway. So we're going to go through our local prompts page again, right-click and show subassemblies. Now I'll just get back into the component doors that I need to adjust the top gap on. It's going to be this one here. I also know that because of the base point in X. It's going over to the middle of that cabinet, so that's the start of my component doors on the right-hand side. Let's take off our 1/4 inch there. Now, before we redraw this cabinet again, I'm going to go back into our subassembly library and start adding those component drawers. Under the same universal category, component inserts, and now component drawers. Now we're going to need 3 of those, so let's just add 3 of those to our product. And now the next step is right-clicking and picking corners for each one of those component drawer subassemblies. Just like our doors, face of the cabinet box, lower left-hand corner to the upper right-hand corner. We got our base point set. Before we move on, I still want to do one more thing to kind of help speed up this process. So right-click on that first component drawer subassembly and show the prompts. Now before we change anything on the overhang, I know that has to be done, but we're not going to do that yet, because the thing I want to show you is going to save us a little bit of time. So under the drawer quantity, let's change that to 1, because each one of these drawer subassemblies are going to have a quantity of 1. I can now save that back to the product to make sure that they all get updated. But actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Another thing that's going to be consistent through these 3 drawer subassemblies is going to be the bottom reveal overhang. So instead of a full overlay, this is going to be the thickness of our part minus 1/4 inch. So because it was 3/4, leaves us with a 1/2 inch. Minus a 1/2 inch on that, apply formula, and now when we save this back to the product, the subassembly called component drawers will keep these values. You'll notice how each one of them turned to that yellow folder, so it's letting you know everything worked the way that it should. Let's not get too far along and redraw this, make sure that we're on the right track. So we knew we needed to change the left and the right reveals on the drawers, but everything else seems to be looking pretty good. We got our 1/8 of an inch gap that we need. So now going back into the component drawer subassembly, this time we're going to get there through our subassembly prompts. So under the Modify Subassemblies and Show Subassembly Prompts, selecting on that first drawer front, here we're asked if we want to go into the nested subassembly or just stay at the parent level. We're just going to stay at the parent subassembly, since that's where our reveal overhangs are. And the right reveal overhang, just minus half of the thickness of that division part. Now this time we're not going to save it back to the product because each reveal is going to be a little bit different. So now we're saving it back to just the row. So if we go through the subassembly prompts for each one, it'll have to redraw before we can get into the next one. So one way to speed up that process a little bit is just doing it through the local prompts and then right-clicking into subassemblies. And now just repeat that same step going into, this time we're going to do it to the left and right reveal overhang. And we can go right into that last component drawer and change the left reveal overhang. Now those subassemblies have some unique properties, so that's why that folder changed back to red. So that looks pretty much like the picture that we were shown. But if you've noticed throughout this video as we're redrawing, we do have an issue with some hardware that keeps showing up as red. As we go back into a 2D wireframe, see what I mean there. We have these hinge plates that have been rotated and they're showing up as red. So what that means is that they haven't been associated to a part, which means we're not going to get any drilling or any machining for those hinge plates on that division. And that's just because the way that the program is set up, it needs to have certain parameters or settings that let Toolbox know that it's okay to drill these holes. So with one division, it's telling us that that's not going to work. But there is an easy solution. Going into the division with adjustable shelves subassembly, we have this prompt here called double division. Now selecting that, Toolbox knows that's the right way that we want to build this cabinet, and we can have those hinge plates be associated to those division parts. Now before we end this video, I do want to show you what happens if we make a change to the width of this cabinet. So now that we've updated the width of the cabinet, the corners that we picked originally aren't updating with that new size. So I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly and show you what we need to do to get this cabinet working the way that we want it to if it were to now be 4 inches wider than we had set up originally. So the first thing that I like to do is turn off those drawer faces or doors so we can pick some new corners. And that's what I mean when I was saying it's slightly different than the old component library. When working with subassemblies, we do have to go into our subassemblies a little bit more and pick corners. So starting with our doors and picking new corners. Now for the drawers. And you can use the orbit command while you're picking these corners too to make it a little bit easier. Now, because I added that double division, I actually don't need those reveals to be different than how they're coming in from the library. So I'll just go back into the subassembly prompts and make the change that you need to there. Then just make sure you do it to the other set too. Now to update the size of that part, we could go into part properties and make the changes there. What we can also do is just update our polyline drawing using our stretch command and just stretching that over 4 more inches. Now we can just edit that top again using that new polyline. You can see we have our updated part length. But you can still see it's not quite right. And that's because there's actually now 2 machining tokens going on with this top. The first time we did it, and then now with the second updated polyline. But we got to get rid of one of those. It's going to be easier if we do it through 2D Part Editor. And all we have to do is delete that original polyline from the drawing. Our original set mill is make sure that you update your current part and redraw the product. And that'll wrap up another training lesson in Microvellum Toolbox. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope this video helped you learn a little bit more on how you can customize your products.